Have you ever wondered what happens in an Amish community when a spouse dies, whether the surviving partner is expected to grieve alone for the rest of their life, or whether a community that forbids divorce entirely has a completely different relationship with death, loss, and the possibility of love again? The clear theological line. The Amish position on remarriage begins with a precise theological distinction. Marriage is a lifelong vow binding for the duration of both partners' lives. When one partner dies, the vow is complete. The surviving spouse is free theologically, practically, and socially to remarry. This is not a loophole. It is the straightforward application of the same scriptural framework that forbids divorce. Death ends the marriage. The living partner begins again. The distinction that matters. The Amish prohibition on remarriage applies specifically to remarriage while the previous spouse is still living. The scriptural passages cited Matthew 5:32, Matthew 19-9, Luke 16:18, address divorced people only, none address widows or widowers. Paul wrote in Romans 7 that a woman is bound to her husband as long as he lives, but if her husband dies, she is free to marry another. This distinction between divorce and death is not a technicality. It is the theological foundation of the entire Amish approach to widowhood. The vow was honored until death intervened. The surviving partner begins again with the community's full blessing. Day 1 community response. When an Amish spouse dies, the community's response is immediate. Men from the church district arrive to handle the farm work. Women arrive with food. The household does not cook for itself in the days after the death. A documented account from New Wilmington, Pennsylvania describes 10 teams of men arriving within days of a husband's death to plow fields, winterize the home and barn, and deliver a winter's supply of coal and wood. This is not exceptional. It is standard. The community shows up because showing up is its function. The practical problem a widow faces. The death of a husband in an Amish household creates a specific set of practical problems that have no easy solution, and that the community's immediate support, however generous, cannot resolve indefinitely. An Amish household is not designed to be run by one adult. It is designed around the division of labor between a husband and wife, the husband managing the farm, the external business relationships, the heavy physical labor of the agricultural operation, the wife managing the household, the garden, the food preservation, the children's daily care, and the domestic economy. When the husband dies, the farm does not stop needing to be worked. The animals do not stop needing to be fed. The crops do not stop needing to be harvested. A widow with young children faces the full domestic load she has always managed, plus the farm responsibilities her husband always managed simultaneously, with fewer hands, on less sleep, and without the partner whose presence structured her daily life. The community will help. The extended family will assist. But the community cannot farm her land and manage its own farms indefinitely. The long-term solution to the practical problem of running an Amish household without a husband is, in most cases, another husband, and the community understands this clearly. The practical problem a widower faces. The death of a wife in an Amish household creates a different but equally serious set of practical problems. An Amish man who loses his wife loses the person who cooked every meal the family ate, preserved the food supply that feeds the household from October through April, sewed every garment every family member wears, managed the daily education and care of the children, and ran the domestic economy of the household with a competence that took years to develop. A widower with young children faces this reality the morning after his wife's funeral. The children need breakfast. The household needs to function. The farm work still begins before sunrise. The man who has spent his adult life working the fields and the barn while his wife managed the house now finds himself responsible for both, and the domestic skills that his wife brought to the household are not skills he necessarily possesses at any useful level. Female neighbors and extended family members will step in. The church community will assist with meals and childcare, but these arrangements cannot be permanent. The widower with young children has, from a practical standpoint, an urgent need that the community recognizes immediately. He needs a woman who can run his household. The urgency of that need is one reason widowers tend to remarry faster than widows and tend to remarry at higher rates overall. The gender imbalance. Research on the Holmes County, Ohio Amish community, one of the largest and most studied Amish settlements in America, has documented a consistent gender imbalance among widowed Amish people. There are significantly more widows than widowers in Amish communities, and the reasons are the same reasons that produce this imbalance in most human populations. Men die earlier than women on average. In an Amish context, where men perform physically demanding agricultural and construction labor across their entire working lives, the gap in life expectancy between men and women may be more pronounced than in less physically demanding populations. The result is a community with more unmarried women than unmarried men, particularly at older ages. This imbalance has practical consequences for the remarriage market. A widower who wishes to remarry has a relatively large pool of available partners, widows his own age, older unmarried women who never married, and in some cases younger women who are still in childbearing years. A widow who wishes to remarry faces a smaller pool. There are simply fewer available men of appropriate age and community standing than there are women seeking them. This asymmetry is acknowledged within Amish communities and is part of why widowers tend to remarry more quickly and more frequently than widows. The widow who does not remarry is not stigmatized, but the structural reality of the community makes her path forward more solitary than her widower counterparts. The two types of second marriage. Research on Amish remarriage has identified two distinct patterns that describe the majority of second marriages within the community. These patterns were documented by researcher Gail LaVecchia in a study of Anabaptist remarriage and referenced in the academic study of Ohio Amish community life. The first type is called companion marriage. This describes a second marriage between two older people, typically a widower and a widow of similar age, or a widower and an older unmarried woman whose primary motivation for marrying is companionship, mutual support, and the practical management of a household in later life rather than the formation of a new family with young children. Companion marriages tend to involve smaller or no blended families, less urgency in the timeline, and a more deliberate pace of courtship and decision-making. The second type is called family formation marriage. This describes a second marriage in which a widower, typically a man with young children who needs a mother for those children, as well as a partner for himself, marries a younger woman who is still in her childbearing years. Family formation marriages tend to involve larger blended families, greater urgency in the timeline because young children need a present mother, and the possibility of additional biological children from the second marriage added to the children the widower brought from the first. Both types are accepted and recognized within Amish communities, and both produce the large, complex family structures that second marriages in a high-fertility community inevitably generate. The most private courtship in America. The courtship process that precedes a second Amish marriage is conducted with a degree of privacy that exceeds even the famously secretive first courtships of Amish young people. The secrecy of a first Amish courtship kept hidden from parents and community members until the engagement is announced just weeks before the wedding is well documented. But first, courtships happen between young people who live in the same community, attend the same Sunday singings, and see each other regularly in the course of daily life. Second courtships often happen differently. Research on Ohio Amish communities documented that courtship between widowed partners is often conducted entirely by mail, with the couple not even meeting in person during the period of courtship. This is not an arrangement born of necessity. It is a deliberate choice rooted in discretion and respect for the memory of the deceased spouse. A widow or widower who begins a visible courtship too soon after the death of their partner risks appearing to dishonor that partner's memory. Conducting the early stages of a new relationship through private correspondence letters exchanged between households, read in private, responded to in private, allows the relationship to develop without the community's observation until both parties are confident enough in the outcome to make it known. By the time the courtship becomes visible to family and neighbors, the decision has often already been made. The announcement follows the certainty rather than preceding it. The blended Amish family. When two Amish people who have each been married before and each had children come together in a second marriage, the resulting household is a blended family of a scale that has no real equivalent in modern American domestic life. A widower with 6 children who marries a widow with 5 children produces a household of 11 children before any additional biological children from the new marriage are counted. In a community where families of 10 or 12 children are not unusual, a blended family of this scale is not remarkable, but the dynamics it produces are genuinely complex. Children from the first marriages range in age from infants to teenagers. They have different memories of their biological parents. They have different relationships with the new step-parent. They must navigate loyalty to a deceased parent while adapting to the presence of a new one. The Amish approach to these dynamics is consistent with the community's general approach to difficulty practical, faith-grounded, and supported by the broader community rather than managed in isolation. Extended family members on both sides remain involved. The church community provides continuity across the transition. The children's connections to the families of their deceased parents, their grandparents on that side, their aunts and uncles, their cousins are not severed by the parents' remarriage. The extended family network expands rather than replaces. What the blended Amish family produces over time is an intergenerational web of relationships that connects multiple family lines through a single household in ways that are specific to a community where everyone already knows everyone. The research. A peer-reviewed study published in the medical literature examined bereavement and mortality among Amish populations using data from the Anabaptist Genealogy Database, a comprehensive record of Amish family history covering thousands of couples across multiple generations. The study's findings on remarriage were clear and consistent with what researchers have found in other populations, but with an Amish-specific dimension that added particular significance to the results. Remarriage after the death of a spouse was associated with a significant decrease in mortality risk among Amish individuals. The widowed Amish person who remarried lived longer, on average, than the widowed Amish person who did not. This finding is not unique to the Amish. The relationship between remarriage and longevity has been documented in other populations. But in the Amish context, it carries additional weight because the community already structures itself around the assumption that marriage is the normal and expected state for adults. The support systems, the household economics, the daily rhythms of Amish life are all organized around the married couple as the basic social and productive unit. A person operating outside that unit, whether by choice or by circumstance, is operating in a context the community was not designed to sustain indefinitely. The research finding that remarriage reduces mortality risk among the widowed is, in the Amish framework, not a surprising discovery. It is a confirmation of what the community structure already implies, that the married household is where Amish adults function best, and that returning to it after loss is not a betrayal of what came before, but a continuation of the life the community was built to support. Remarriage is not a choice. The question posed in the title of this video, do Amish remarry after a spouse's death, has a simple answer: yes. Frequently, fairly quickly, and with the full support of the community that surrounds them. But the simple answer misses what is most interesting about the Amish approach to this question. The Amish do not remarry after a spouse's death, despite their strict views on marriage. They remarry because of them. A community that treats marriage as the fundamental organizing unit of adult life that structures its households, its economics, its daily labor, and its social world around the married couple has built a system in which the death of a spouse creates a practical and social gap that the community recognizes must be filled. The widow who cannot run a farm alone, the widower whose children need a mother, the older man whose household requires the management skills his wife brought to it for 30 years, the older woman whose financial security depended on a partnership that death has ended. The community's response to each of these situations is not primarily emotional. It is practical, and the practical response that the community has arrived at over 300 years is that the person who lost a spouse needs another one. The courtship is private. The wedding is simpler than the first. The blended family is large and complicated, but the outcome, a functioning household, a present partner, a life organized around the shared work and shared faith that the Amish understand as the foundation of everything, is the same outcome the first marriage was designed to produce. Loss is real. The path back from it in an Amish community has always been clear.